Good afternoon, students. I hope all of you are doing good and I hope your preparation is going fine. Welcome to today's Analyst. This is 5th of January 2024 and we are here to discuss important articles from The Hindu and The Indian Express. Now, the handout of this session is there in the description box. You may utilize it to streamline your current affairs preparation. Now, coming to the first topic. The first topic is loss-making startups in India and what is their status. Second topic is related to higher education in India. The third topic is related to Aditya L1 Mission. Fourth topic is related to SEBI, that is Security Exchange Board of India. Last but not the least is related to Export Credit Guarantee Corporation. So let's start with the first topic. The first topic is related to loss-making startups. Now, why this is news is because over half of the IPO, that is initial public offering bound startups, are still in loss-making stages. Now, this is very important for us to understand that why are such big startups valued in billions are loss-making, and why it is important for our syllabus, for our GS paper 3, Indian economy and issues relating to it. This becomes very, very important. Now, coming to the topic itself. Now, close to 12 startups have either filed their draft red herring prospectus with the SEBI or are planning to get listed in the securities market or in the stock exchanges in this particular year. And out of those 12 startups, 8 of them are still loss-making. And still they are planning to launch an IPO, that is initial public offering. That means they are planning to give the shares of their companies to the public. That is to offer their shares of their company to the general public and raise money from the general public, right? And out of 12 who are thinking of doing so, 12 big companies, startups, around 8 of them are still loss-making. And amongst those loss-making startups, it includes unicorns such as your MobiKwik, such as your First Cry, such as your Ola Electric as well, right? Very, very big companies. Now, the combined loss of these 8 startups, right, it's close to 8,000 crores. Now, this is a very, very huge loss which they are making. That means they're still not profitable, but they're planning to give their shares to the public and raise money from the public, right? Of course, after the nod from the SEBI, that is Security Exchange Board of India. Now, this combined loss of 8,000 crores, it includes companies like your Swiggy, Oyo and Ola Electric because they are having the biggest share of these losses, right? Which again turns us to a very important problem which might affect our Indian economy also later on, right? But before understanding that why these companies are loss-making and still running after so many years as well, and still investors are pumping in money to these countries, what's the reason for that? And why they are able to have such huge losses and still go for the IPO, right? What is the reason for that? But before understanding that, let's see some statistics. So what happened is that in year 2022, a report was launched, right? A study was made of close to 74 unicorns, right? Now, unicorns are the companies whose valuation has crossed the $1 billion mark, right? So, 74 unicorns, their study was done. Now, out of those 74 unicorns, 55 were loss-making. You see the extent of loss-making unicorns in our country. So, 55 unicorns are yet to have some profit. That means still they are spending more than what they are earning. So, they are making losses, right? And 19 are operationally profitable. Only 19 are operationally profitable. Now, the median annual revenue of these 74 unicorns which were studied, the median annual revenue, it is close to $76 million, right? And the median annual expenditure we see, it's $122 million. You see how much median annual expenditure is more than the median annual revenue. It is substantially more, right? And if you see the aggregate of it, so the aggregate total revenue is close to $13.3 billion, right? And the aggregate total expenditure, it is close to $18 billion plus. So you see the difference of $5 billion here. That means $5 billion in losses. So you see the extent that the startups and the unicorns in our country are loss-making. Now we need to understand what is the reason for it. That what is the primary reason that these companies are loss-making and yet able to run smoothly? What's the reason for that? See, first and very basic reason is that these companies intentionally have thought of focusing more on growth, right? So they are having heavy investment and they are putting in heavy investment. They're burning a lot of cash, they're pumping in a lot of money just to grow as a company. That means to increase their sales, to increase their public profile, to increase its consumer base, and to increase its traction among the public, right? That is their focus currently, the focus of these startups, to gain more and more consumers, right? So heavy investment on growth. And this happens at many times, not sometimes, but many times at the cost of profit. Because they'll have to spend more money than what they are earning just for the acquisition of customers, right? So in the startup world, how the lingo is or how the things are being talked about is that how much do you spend to acquire a customer? So what is your consumer expenditure acquisition or a consumer acquisition expenditure? How much you spend in order to acquire a consumer? So that is the lingo which is going on in the startup world. So heavy investment on growth, sometimes at the cost of profit. And also they want higher market share. So they want to beat their competitors. And how will they beat their competitors? By having lesser price than the competitors. And of course, if they go for the lesser price, then ultimately they will incur losses. Because if they go for lesser price, their revenue will also be lower. And if their revenue is lower and expenditure is similar only, and if they want to compete with their competitors and beat their competitors, they will spend more on advertising. They will spend more on, again, consumer acquisition. So again, losses would be incurred. And the companies, why they are able to run? Because the investors who are pumping in money, they see a future potential in the company. So the very big company which is talked about in the startup culture is that of Amazon. And they talk how Amazon was loss making for the initial many years, right? So Amazon was spending more money just to acquire the public, right? And after that, slowly and steadily, it started earning multiple humongous revenues, right? So in the same way, the investors in these companies see that, okay, my company is also having the potential to become the next Amazon. Okay, my company can also grow on in the near future and also have a very big prospect, positive future potential, right? That is why they're able to run in losses and sustain currently in short term as well. And also they go for aggressive growth. See, one thing is you call it as a natural growth rate. That naturally you grow slowly and steadily. So you get some revenue. From the revenue, you earn some profits, right? The profit you reinvest in your business. And then you spend money to a certain extent, to a certain limited expenditure. But when your expenditures becomes unlimited, you're spending millions of dollars in ads, millions of dollars to acquire customer, millions of dollars for the banners, millions of dollars just to get the right personnel, right staff. But your revenue is very less. In that case, you're going for aggressive growth strategy, right? And these startups are primarily going for aggressive growth strategy. And since they're going for aggressive growth and again they're trying to beat their competition up by spending more money, ultimately there is one term which we use that they go for burning the cash reserves which they're having. So they go for cash burns. And again, I'll tell you one common lingo among the startup world that usually the startup founders, they ask themselves or ask others as well amongst themselves. They talk about how much cash your company is burning right now and how much potential do you have to burn the cash, right? So, but in India, how the traditional businesses were run? Traditionally, the businesses were run on profit. That if a business is profitable, people would be going for that, right? But right now, of course, this is the westernized culture because startup culture first emanated in Western countries, then came to our country. This culture of venture capitalist, angel investors, right? It is all from the West. But when it came to our country, of course, from the West only, this living on credit, right? Having more losses than the profits, right? So not having profits, making a loss and still able to run and still have the valuation of $1 billion or $10 billion, right? So all of this came from the West. But traditionally, India has always focused more on the profit-making businesses. Now, of course, what I'm saying is that the main aim or the major aim of these companies also, which we discussed, is to earn more and more profit. But they are seeing a future potential. So in future, they would want to earn more profit. And currently, they just want to sustain. They just want to grow, right? And to acquire more and more consumers. So that is what is happening with your Zomato, your Swiggy, Paytm, right? Or let's say your Bharat Pay, one of the biggest loss-making companies in the country, right? So they are incurring huge losses. They are yet to see any kind of profit. But still they are running, and still they are very big names in the country, right? So I hope you understand that why these loss-making startups, again, how they are able to sustain. And if you see in startup financial cycle, there is one term which is used. That is the term of valley of death. Because in a startup life, there is a period where you require more revenue, but your revenue is very, very less because you have burnt cash and you spent some money for research and development initially at the initial period of your startup. So there is a period which is the valley of death. That is when the startup is having very, very less money, and if the startup goes anywhere wrong, or if the money reaches beyond, or let's say less than certain level, then the company would die down. The startup would be closed. But the usual task of a startup is to cross this valley of death, and first to go to a break-even point. So to cross this valley of death, go to a break-even point, and then eventually over a period of time, grow step by step. First stage, second stage, third stage, and so on, right? And eventually go for secondary offering, that is public market, right? That is your IPO, initial public offering, right? So first go for primary market and then go for the secondary offering. So this is the early stages where venture capitalists will come, acquisitions, mergers, strategic alliances amongst the startups will happen, right? So these are the early stages and the later stages of the startup when the startup becomes a mature company, right? And once a startup turns to a mature company, then they go on for the initial public offering, right? So I hope this startup financing culture is also clear to all of you. And the loss-making startups and the story related to it is also very clear in your mind. So now moving forward to the second topic of today, it is related to higher education in India. Now a write-up is appeared on India's higher education being out of touch with the skill requirement. Of course, this is a question which is asked in this article, and I'll request all of you, sorry. So I'll request all of you to just go through this article once because it's a very, very beautifully written article. Both of the sides of the spectrum has been mentioned here, right? So you should read this and then you'll get to know that is really our Indian education system out of touch with the skill requirement, or there are some other reasons that why people are not able to get a secure job after they complete their education, right? So you'll understand that as well. Why it is relevant for us, our general studies paper 2, issues related to development and management of social sector and services relating to education has been clearly mentioned in the syllabus. That is why it becomes very, very important. Now, first question we need to know in understanding higher education in India, because I primarily wanted to discuss with you that what is the status of higher education in India and how higher education in India, our government is trying to improve, right? And again, making people skill-based, making students skill-based so that they earn more and more skills, they acquire more and more skills, and eventually they become employable. And they secure good jobs after they graduate, or let's say after they complete their masters. So first we need to know what is the importance of education. Now, as a very great quote says, or as a very great quote goes, that education is the most important and powerful tool with which you can change the whole world. Of course, it is said by Nelson Mandela. This shows you that how powerful education is, right? Now, status of higher education in India. The university and colleges are close to more than 1,050 universities are there in India currently, right? So 42,000 close to that colleges are there. 11,779 standalone institutions are there in country. Related to higher education we are talking about. And gross enrollment ratio in higher education, it is just as 27.1%, which is abysmally low. So this is a cause of concern for us. And according to the QS rankings of the world, so World QS University rankings, only 3 universities in India are in the top 200 universities of the world, right? So again, which is a very, very poor performance of our universities in the world rankings. But we need to understand what are the issues and challenges plaguing our higher education sector. Now, first is of course the gross enrollment ratio being very, very low. In the new this education policy which the government is having, under that also the target of government is to ensure that gross enrollment in higher education improves a lot, right? But again, this gross enrollment ratio is low. That is why it is a issue and challenge for us, because people are or students are not going to the higher education institutes. That's a very big problem. Now there are structural reasons for that as well. Equity. So let's say gender disparity, or your regional disparity, gender disparity, regional disparity, religion disparity, caste disparity, right? So disparity amongst various spheres, various facets of life or various phases of society is there. And these disparities are manifesting in the higher education sector as well. So which ultimately leads to higher education not being equitable, right? And equity is missing in this higher education. So equity is one of the challenge, that we are not able to ensure equity in higher education. We are not able to make everyone afford and take higher education in our country, whether be it in relation to gender, whether be it in relation to class, whether be it in relation to caste, or whether be it in relation to region, that is your rural, urban, or gender, male, female, right? So in relation to that, we are not able to ensure equity. That is a very big problem. Financing, right? So again, class-based equity is not there. That means a difference between rich and poor. Rich people are usually able to afford good higher educational institutions. But even till today, a good quality higher educational institute in our country, especially the IITs and IIMs, especially the IIMs, right? They require high fees to be paid. And of course, poor people are not able to afford that. So financing still remains a very, very big cause of concern in our country in relation to higher education. And quality of higher education, of course. So your skill-based higher education, right? So skill-based higher education, or let's say your higher education in relation to your skill-based higher education, or higher education in relation to your industry standards. So skill-based higher education, industry-related higher education, whereby directly after education you can go to the companies and get a job. That is missing. And there was a committee, that is your Rashpal committee of 2009. Now this also suggested, or this also said, that there are several issues and challenges plaguing our educational sector. Of course, it also talked about equity, it also talked about the disparity, poor people not being able to afford higher education, good quality higher education, the problem of good quality teachers, problem of good quality faculties. That is very good, that is very big cause of concern, which was highlighted in the Yashpal Committee 2009 report as well. Of course, the recommendations were also given in that report, that what needs to be done in order to improve the higher education quality standard in our country, right? So reforms in Indian higher education, what are the various basic reforms which needs to be done? So we'll be just studying different terms, which will suggest us a very new reform. Autonomy. That means higher education institutions in our country needs to be given more autonomy. They need to be more creative. They need to be told that, okay, what do you think? What is important for the higher education? How quality can be improved? So a little bit autonomy. That is not over-regulating them. And accountability, transparency as well. So if you are giving them autonomy, you need to make sure that they are accountable and they are transparent as well. Because otherwise, this autonomy can be misused as well, right? Okay, employability. So in order to ensure that higher education in India is meaningful, is purposeful, is purpose-driven, we need to ensure that it is employability-driven as well. That means higher education should be provided in a way that it makes people employable. How? By impartation of important skills, relevant skills, industry standard, industry quality skills. also incurring and inculcating the value of social responsibility amongst the higher education institutions. And of course, improving your innovation standards. So, in innovation, research, development, and entrepreneurship. In these sectors, improvement in higher education institutions should be there, right? Now, in relation to this, we need to discuss about the National Education Policy of 2020 and what it entails, because it is very important, of course, for our higher education as well. So this national education policy, it talks about universalization of education from preschool to secondary level with 100% of gross enrollment ratio in school education by 2030. And if we are talking about higher education, the purpose or the aim of this national education policy is to ensure that the gross enrollment ratio in higher education is to be raised to 50% by the year 2035. That is the aim. Currently, it is close to 27%. So it needs to be increased to 50% by 2035, which is a very big task. And 3.5 crore seats to be added in the higher educational institutions in our country. That is the main purpose. Now this NEP 2020, it will bring 2 crore out of the school children back into the mainstream. That is also the purpose of it. And in order to ensure that a new curriculum has been launched, that is your 5 plus 3 plus 3 plus 4 school curriculum, right? Rather than your 10 plus 2 earlier, which was existing. So it is now 5 plus 3 plus 3 plus 4 with the 12 years of schooling and 3 years of Anganwadi and preschooling. That is there in the National Education Policy. And also there will be no rigid separation between what? Earlier, there was a rigid separation between your academics, your extracurricular and your vocational streams. That is the streams which provide you skills. But now, after new national education policy, there will be no rigid separation between them. They'll be amalgamated and given to the students together. And vocational education will start in our country from class 6th, along with internships. So from class 6th onwards, students will be learning vocational education, along with internships. Eventually, then only higher education will be purposeful for them. And teaching up to grade 5th to be in mother tongue. Again, a very, very important initiative. What are the other set of initiatives? So higher education particularly, it will be given an option of flexibility of subjects. So now the curriculum is very rigid. Commerce students read just commerce curriculum. Science students, medical students read medical curriculum. Economics students read economics curriculum, right? So there is no flexibility of subjects and curriculums. But after this national education policy, higher education curriculum is made or has been made already. Some of the curriculums has been changed as well. And some of the curriculums will be changed with the flexibility of subjects. And you will be getting multiple entry and exit options while you are doing your graduation, while you are doing your masters, with appropriate certification. So appropriate certification will be provided to you and you will be having multiple entry and exit options, right? And academic bank of credit will be created. So you will be able to transfer the credits as well, the credit system which is there, on which you get your scores. And a National Research Foundation, again to foster the culture of research and development, will be created. Then affiliation system, it will be eventually phased out in the next 15 years. And again, the reform which we discussed, more autonomy. So graded autonomy will be provided to the colleges. And this affiliation system, it will be phased out over the span of the next 15 years, right? And also use of technology with equity. So equity is not there, that is one of the challenge. So this national education policy is the way out because it focuses on use of technology in education system with equity. So National Education Technology Forum will be created, right? And also it emphasizes on setting up several funds, again to ensure that equity. So Gender Inclusion Fund, special education zones for your disadvantaged regions and groups. And also your national institutions of your Pali, Persian and Prakrit language will be created. And Indian Institute of Translation and Interpretation to be set up. So these are the various initiatives in our higher education sector which the government is planning to do, and government has already taken up several of the initiatives, right? So I hope this is also clear to all of you. Now coming to the third topic, that is your Aditya L1 mission. Now Aditya L1 mission is set to be placed in the final orbit tomorrow. For our general studies paper 3, awareness in the field of IT and space. So in the science and technology sector, in science and technology subject, this Aditya L1 mission becomes very, very important. Of course, for your current events of national and international importance as well. So what is this Aditya L1 mission? That is the first question. So it is a planned coronagraphy spacecraft to study the solar atmosphere. And solar corona is the outermost part of the sun, right? So this Aditya L1 mission was launched in September of 2. And it will get into the halo orbit, which is around the Lagrange point 1, that is L1. Now, what is this L1? Now, L1 is one of the 5 spots in the moving Sun-Earth system. So the system of Sun and Earth, in that moving system, L1 is one of the 5 spots, Lagrange point 1. And in this point, gravitational effects of the two bodies, that is Earth and Sun, roughly balance out each other, right? So at this point, this Aditya L1 mission would be going. Now, what are the various objectives of this Aditya L1 mission? So various objectives includes to get a deeper understanding, of course, of the coronal heating of solar wind acceleration. To get an understanding about that, about coronal heating and how the solar wind acceleration happens, about coupling and dynamics of the solar atmosphere, to understand your solar atmosphere as well, your solar wind distribution, and your temperature entropy, right? In order to understand that as well, the major objective of L1 mission is there, right? And then initiation of coronal mass ejection, your CME, the flares, the solar flares, and near Earth space weather. So this is the major science objectives of your Aditya L1 mission, to understand these things in relation to Sun. If you have to understand few very basic things about Aditya L1 mission, of course, it is the first Indian space-based observatory class mission, right? Launched in 2 September 2020, launched in 2 September, right? 2023, of course. And distance is close to 1.5 million kilometer from the Earth. Cost is close to 378.5 crores. And time duration is close to 4 months. Now, 7 payloads it's including. So these are the name of the payloads which has been mentioned on your screen. 7 payloads will be included. And what are the major objectives of it? Major objective is to understand the corona solar, wind of course, solar atmosphere, sun flares, and near Earth space weather. So in order to understand these things, Aditya L1 mission has been launched, right? I hope this Aditya L1 mission is very, very clear to all of you. Now coming to the next topic, that is your Security Exchange Board of India, that is your SEBI. Now the recent Supreme Court ruling on this Adani Hindenburg issue has said that SEBI, that is Security Exchange Board of India, has prima facie conducted a comprehensive investigation. Now many people are saying that SEBI, many people are countering this particular proposition as well, that it has not conducted a comprehensive investigation. But Supreme Court in its judgment has said that SEBI prima facie has conducted a comprehensive investigation. So there are two sides to it, right? But we need to understand what is the function of SEBI and why SEBI is involved in this. What is the real function of SEBI? What is the organization called SEBI? We need to understand that. So in order to study that, we need to know why it is important. So for General Studies Paper 2, statutory, regulatory and quasi-judicial bodies have been mentioned. And SEBI is what? SEBI is a statutory body. So initially SEBI started out as a non-statutory body, which was not having statutory powers. But it became autonomous and was given statutory powers by your SEBI Act of 1992. So Security Exchange Board of India Act 1992. And what is the major aim of the Security Exchange Board of India? For protecting the interest of investors who are investing in the securities, regulating the securities market, regulating the stock market, and also the mutual funds function as well. So that is the major aim of the Security Exchange Board of India. Now, what are the various functions, the primary functions and divisions of the SEBI? So it's divided into 3 functions primarily. First is your protective, second is your regulatory, and third one is your developmental function, right? So first, let's see the protective function. Of course, it checks on price rigging. That means price is not manipulated of a particular stock, of a particular share. That is what SEBI checks. It also checks insider trading. That some people who are inside the company, are they misusing some insider information to trade in the market, right? So they check on insider trading as well. They check on manipulative and fraudulent activities inside the stock market. So that is also they're having a check on. Also, they educate the customers and they check on preferential allotment of shares as well. And while doing these functions, they are having a protective function towards security markets. Now, second, we'll study the regulatory function, regulating function. So it frames rules and regulations for the whole stock market, right? It registers and regulates the intermediaries, that is the stockbrokers. It registers, regulates the mutual funds also. And it also conducts inquiries and audits the stock exchange regularly from time to time. So auditing as well, registering as well for mutual funds, registering intermediaries as well. That is what your SEBI is doing. Now, developmental function, how SEBI is trying to develop the stock markets. So they train the intermediaries also, that is the stockbrokers. They promote investors' education so that investors gets educated and they are not duped, they are not scammed in the stock market, right? And they also conduct the research and publishing information in the stock market. And that is the primary role of SEBI in order to ensure these protective functions are followed, developmental functions are taken care of, and regulatory functions are also taken care of. So that is your Security Exchange Board of India. Now coming to the last topic, that is your Export Credit Guarantee Corporation. Now the central government is keen to expand this ECGC cover to jewelry exporters as well. But we need to understand what is this ECGC and why the government is planning to expand the cover to the jewelry exporters. For our general studies paper 3, of course, Indian economy, this topic becomes very, very important. Now we need to understand what is this Export Credit Guarantee Corporation, ECGC. Now this ECGC Limited is a wholly owned by Ministry of Commerce and Industry. That means it is a governmental organization. Now when it was set up, it was known as Exports Risk Insurance Corporation. And it was set up in the year 1957. And after that, its name was changed to Export Credit and Guarantee Corporation Limited in 1964. And after that, in 2014, August of 2014, it was again changed to ECGC Limited, right? So currently we talk about Export Credit Guarantee Corporation. The real name of it is ECGC Limited. Now, what is the main role? Just see the name of it, Export Credit Guarantee, right? So the major role of this Export Credit Guarantee Corporation is to promote exports first. That means goods which are going out of our country, services going out of our country, to promote that. And how do they promote that? They provide credit insurance services. That means they provide insurance services on the basis of credit, or in relation to credit to whom? To the exporters. Against what? Insurance against what? Against the non-payment of risks. Against the non-payment risks. That means if the buyer who is buying the product from us, from our country, if that buyer is not able to repay, or this buyer is not able to pay us the money, right? So it is against the non-payment risks by the overseas buyers. Overseas buyers, when they are purchasing the goods from us, if they are not able to pay us, to cover that risk, insurance coverage is provided by your ECGC. And of course, why they are not able to pay? For your commercial and political reasons, that is the risk coverage by ECGC which is provided. Now, is it only provided to exporters? The answer is no. It also provides guarantees to banks and financial institutions as well, so as to enable the exporters so that they can obtain the facilities from the banks in a better way. The credit system, right? The credit from the bank, the loans from the bank. So to ensure that exporters are also facilitated, right? To get the facilities, to get the benefits from the bank, the guarantee is also provided to the bank by the ECGC. So it's providing insurance coverage to whom? To individual exporters also, to the exporting companies, right, who are exporting from India to other countries, right? And it is also providing guarantees to banks and financial institutions. And you will be happy to know that 85% of the market share in the export credit insurance market is held by this ECGC in our country. So I hope this Export Credit Guarantee Corporation is also very, very clear to all of you. So I hope this lecture was enjoyable and you understood a lot of things in this lecture. All the very best to all of you and have a nice day. Thank you.